Okay, so we're trying to work out how it is acceptable for Moshe to detour on the way to a divinely instructed mission. Hashem tells him, go to Korach and Dasan and Aviram and speak to all the people who are hanging around over there and tell them, get out of there. This is about to, it's literally like the evacuation notices, that this place is about to get taken out, and make sure you're not in the firing line. So the Torah then tells us that Moshe gets up, as Dave pointed out yesterday, he gets up and he goes and he engages Dasan and Aviram. How can you do that? That's not what you were told to do. You were told to engage the people. So Rashi addresses this, and he does not say what the other commentaries point out, which is that he went to get them to do teshuvah, or that he went to warn them about what was going to happen. Rather, Rashi leaves it far more open-ended. He says that Moshe went in order that they should show him some respect. Also seems like a bit of a strange objective. He doesn't even quote the Gemara that says, here we learn that you shouldn't prolong any kind of conflict, but you should try to de-escalate. It doesn't even go that route. So the question is, how does Rashi understand this? What is Moshe doing? And the linchpin, the hinge to understand all of this is to go back to one of the what seemed at the time seemed like a technical question, but actually this is where everything lies. The technical question was, if Rashi is explaining that Moshe went to Dasan and Aviram, why does he not quote those words? Because the way Rashi works is, there'll be a pasuk, and then he'll quote a word or words out of the pasuk and say, this is what I'm explaining. So if the issue is over here, why is he going to Dasan and Aviram? You would expect that Rashi would take those words, the words Vayelech el Dasan v'Aviram, that he went to Dasan and Aviram. Those are the key words. That's what you'd expect. And then you'd expect him to explain them. Instead, what Rashi does is he takes the words Vayakam Moshe, the Moshe got up. He doesn't put an etc., so there's absolutely no link to the next part about going to Dasan and Aviram. He just says that Moshe got up, and then he comments in order to get them to show him respect. So what's the link? What's the link between Moshe getting up and them showing him respect? There's a logical link between him going to them. Obviously, if he goes to them, he's trying to achieve something with them. That would make sense. But Vayakam Moshe, how does that explain anything? So, again, as Dave pointed out yesterday, who says getting up just means getting out of your seat? Right? There are various ways that you could describe a person on their way, leaving their space or their office or their home, or there are various ways you could say it. He exited, he went on his way, he or just simply say he walked over to them. So that's what Rashi is picking up over here. The Torah could have told us, Vayelech Moshe el Dasan v'Aviram, which it says in the pasuk, Vayelech Moshe el Dasan v'Aviram, and Moshe went to Dasan and Aviram. It did not have to say Vayakam, and he got up. Often we do that kind of thing. We use expressions that are just turns of phrase, but they don't actually add any value to the conversation. Like often people say, so I turned around and said. You didn't turn around. So why are you using that expression? It's this turn of phrase that has absolutely no meaning, right? And in the same way, a person could say, he got up and went to wherever. You don't have to tell me he got up. Obviously, if he went, he obviously wasn't still sitting when he went. So it implies that he got up. So why did you have to say, and he got up? Now, if that's an issue when humans talk, it's certainly an issue when the Torah talks. Because the Torah is so precise. Nothing, no word, not even a letter in the Torah is used out of place. So if the Torah is telling us Vayakam Moshe, then Moshe got up. And then it tells us Vayelech, that he went to Dasan and Aviram. We have to analyze each of those components independently. We have to analyze why is he going to Dasan and Aviram. And we have to analyze why the Torah needs us to know that he got up to go to Dasan and Aviram. So this word Vayakam, to get up, where else, or in what other contexts could we use that kind of an expression? To rise up, to get up, kum. Any idea?
Sure. you're being depressed, then you.
Oh, okay.
If someone is being bad to you, that you rise up against them.
Okay, so you just said two different things.
Yes, I know.
Right, the one is that, let's say the person is down,
Yes.
and you tell them, get up, pick yourself up.
No, but not in
Right?
not in answer directly to your question. But to get up was meaning business. He didn't find it unimportant enough to send somebody else on his behalf.
Okay,
He was
okay,
going to get up.
good. So it could mean that you're in a negative space, and now you've got to get yourself up and be in a positive space. It could mean that you have to be assertive. Get up, stand up for yourself. Don't just be a passive bystander. Don't let people treat you this way. It could also mean, get up and don't delegate. Do this yourself. Get on your feet. Do this yourself. Okay? All of those things would be valid. All of those things would be valid. What we need to do, and this is how Rashi operates, is if we have a word that disturbs us in the Torah, Rashi would typically go back earlier in the Torah and see, do we have the same expression somewhere else? And have we already learned something about how this expression works because it's been presented somewhere else? And if we have, we're going to call on that information and apply it over here. And very often Rashi will do that without telling us that he's doing it, because Rashi anticipates that if you've already learned up until this point, you have that information at your fingertips, which maybe is a little bit of a high expectation for us. But that's how Rashi operates. If I've dealt with this before, if I've addressed this kind of language earlier in the Torah, I'm not going to have to address it again now. So you as the student, you've got to go back, find this expression, see what I said about it, and apply that knowledge over here. Which, by the way, speaks to a bigger issue, that generally speaking, when a person studies Torah, you actually have to go chronologically. You actually have to go, especially the medieval commentators like Rashi and the Rambam, etc. You've got to start from the beginning of their commentary, because they keep building on the information that they've already provided. You can't just jump in the middle and expect that you have context. So that's what Rashi's doing over here. He's saying, okay, let's see. Have we had this expression earlier in the Torah? Have I discussed it earlier in the Torah? Because that might have information that's relevant over here. So where else have we heard? It says Vayakam Moshe. Moshe got up. Where else have we had the expression Vayakam? Go all the way back to the time of Avraham, and you'll find that same expression. Except there, it's not an expression about a person. It's actually an expression about a property. So in Parshas Chayei Sarah, just after Sarah passes away, we know that Avraham has to find a place to bury her. And so he goes to what's called the field of Ephron, and he negotiates with the family to buy the field of Ephron, which today we know as Hebron. And more specifically, we know as the Maras HaMachpelah, the cave where the patriarchs and matriarchs are buried. So in that negotiation, it's a whole negotiation, which is not subject for this discussion of how he negotiates, how much he ends up paying, etc., etc. But after the deal is signed, the Torah tells us, Vayakam Sedei Ephron. There's the same word, right? Vayakam Sedei Ephron. The field of Ephron rose up. It's a highly unusual expression. Basically, what you're talking about is you're talking about a transaction. So what it should say is that it transferred. You should say that it was bought, that it changed hands. Any of those expressions would make sense when you're doing a deal. And effectively, the deal is to buy a property. So it's okay, now the property's been bought. The question is, why does it say Vayakam, that the field rose up? What does that mean? It's a very unusual expression. So Rashi tells us what it means. Rashi says, Tukuma hayasa loi, that at that moment, when Abraham purchased this field, this area from Ephron, the land was upgraded. And Rashi explains why. Because Ephron, even though in his society he was a bit of a knacker, but at the end of the day, who's Ephron? He's a nobody. You know how it is. The guy who carries the big bunch of keys. At the end of the day, outside of his little ecosystem, he's a nobody. And spiritually, he is certainly a nobody. Whereas Abraham, of course, we know without a doubt that Abraham was a superstar in terms of spirituality. He was one of the greatest people that ever lived. But even besides that, even just from a mundane perspective, Abraham was recognized in the environment as royalty. We're not talking about Abraham at the beginning of his journey where he's trying to battle to convince people that Hashem exists. Now we're talking about Avram at 120, Sarah is 100, he's 137 years old. He's established himself. He has a following. He's a respected individual. When not so long before that, when Yitzchak was born and they celebrated, according to different opinions, what they celebrated was the bris or his bar mitzvah, whatever. It says that all the leaders of the territories around Canaan all came to participate out of respect to Avram. So now, when you have a piece of property that used to belong to Mr. Smith, who just lives on the block, and now it belongs to some big major billionaire, the profile is upgraded. Now suddenly it's a different story. So in other words, Rashi's told us that when the Torah uses this expression vayokom, what it means is that something is elevated in stature. Previously it was an ordinary status, and now it's got special status. If we know that information and we plug that into this story, then we understand that there are two ways that Moshe could have walked over to do his mission. His mission is get the other people to leave. So Moshe could have said, okay, listen, Hashem told me I must go tell everybody else to leave. I'm going to do that. Very simple. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go. I'm going to tell all the people around the tents of Dasan, Aviram, and Korach, please move away, because Hashem has to do a what do they call it? A precision strike. Okay? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that.
I like that.
Vayokom. Before Moshe goes to them, he lifts his stature. How does he lift his stature? How does Rashi know this, besides the language? Because the verse continues that together with Moshe, there were 70 elders. Now, why do you need 70 elders? What do you need? It's a simple instruction. Moshe, go tell the people, get out of here. Why do you need this whole delegation of 70 elders? Why? Because now it becomes an entourage. Now it's not just Moshe, the individual, albeit the leader of the Jewish people, the teacher of the Jewish people. This is now Moshe, who has 70 of the greatest, most respected people in the community tailing him. This is a delegation. This is an entourage. This speaks to how prominent Moshe is, to how much stature Moshe has. And Moshe's hope, and this is the point that Rashi makes, Moshe's hope is Yisu lo iponim. When Moshe arrives with his major motorcade and all the fanfare, and everybody starts talking and buzzing, oh my gosh, look what's happening. Moshe's coming and all the elders are coming and it's a whole big deal. Moshe hopes that that's going to twig something in Dasan and Aviram's brains. Because what's happened over here is they are swaggering, or they've been walking around with this ego, this arrogance. We're going to take you on. We're going to take you on, Moshe. We think you're running the community wrong. We think you've invested badly. We think that you're a nepotist. We're gonna stand up to you. And when Moshe summons them for conversation, right, earlier on in the parasha, they're like, Lo nale, we're not interested. We're not answerable to you. Meaning that a big chunk of their misbehavior, besides the fact that they rejected the divine system of how the Kohen Gadol works, etc., for which there is no recourse. They can't escape that. The die's been set and now they're going to be killed for that. There's no way out. But part of the problem is they showed a massive disrespect to Moshe, and that's the kind of thing that could be contagious. Other people could pick up on it. You see, they spoke to Moshe this way, whatever. So Moshe hopes that if he arrives without even saying a word to them, without even going face to face with them, if he just pulls into their neighborhood with this massive entourage, maybe that will help them realize they were completely out of line in their attitude towards Moshe. And maybe it will help them realize they should at least apologize to him. They should at least reset the sensitivity to Moshe's position as Hashem's representative. This is not a personal thing. It's not that Moshe needs their accolades. He has to preserve his position as the one representing Hashem. So he's hoping that this is going to get through to them. It's like a shock value kind of experience. And now we don't have an issue any longer with how could Moshe detour from his mission. He's not. He's actually going directly to do his mission. His mission is tell everybody to clear out. He's going to do that. Is he going to speak to Dasan and Aviram according to Rashi? He's not. That's why Rashi doesn't say he wants to tell them to do Teshuvah, or he wants to warn them about what's going to happen, or he wants to try and reconcile with them. None of that. Moshe is 100% on task with what Hashem has told him. It's just that he's crafting it in such a way that hopefully the whole to-do will also shake them out of their complacency and hopefully get a response out of them. That teaches us something incredible about Moshe, and it teaches us something incredible about how we should behave. Can you imagine? Moshe gets a direct instruction from Hashem. These people are beyond the pale. There's nothing you can do. They have to die. Just tell everybody else to get out of the way. And Moshe can't accept that. He can't accept that we're just going to write them off that way. He knows that there's no room for teshuvah. He knows that he cannot save their lives. But Moshe, out of his abundant care and love for every single Jewish person, still wants to find some kind of roundabout method to try get into their heads to get some level of reconciliation. Even when he's not allowed to. So he's not breaking the rules. He's just working within the rules. Okay, I won't talk to you. You say I mustn't talk to them, I won't talk to them. You say I mustn't approach them, I won't approach them. But what will I do? I'll create an environment that is just so overwhelming that maybe, just maybe, it will get through to them. And why is that? Because Moshe cannot tolerate the thought that you just let somebody go and you know, as the worst of the worst. Let's salvage something. Now, it's not a surprise to us that Moshe is such a lover of the Jewish people. After the golden calf, he did a similar thing, right? Hashem said clearly, no hope, and I'm going to destroy everybody. And Moshe was the one who petitioned, and he tried, and eventually succeeded in getting Hashem to forgive the Jewish people. Which also, by the way, tells you that if Moshe didn't now intercede further on behalf of Korach and Dasan and Aviram, he obviously knew that there was nothing to discuss.
But also, by letting this whole thing happen, and by doing what he did now, first of all, Dasan and Aviram, they weren't even a Levi, so
right.
Where are they to come and try and grab leadership? He had to show strength for everybody else to see that strength.
Correct. But again, it's not just that he has to show strength because he has something to prove. He has to try and help them. That's the point. He's trying also to help them, even in a situation where you can't help them. It's like the Frierdiker Rebbe used to say, there are certain, if you learn in halacha, there are certain people who get to a point that they are so spiritually bankrupt that you're not permitted to have mercy on them. So if that kind of person is in a life-threatening situation, you're actually not allowed to help them. So the Frierdiker Rebbe, I believe it was the Frierdiker Rebbe, used to say that if there is somebody that the Torah says is beyond the point that you're allowed to show them compassion, can you imagine how much compassion you should show them? In other words, you can't break the rules. The rules are X. Hashem has defined that this is how it has to happen. But you have to have a heart. And so Moshe has to find some kind of a way to maybe, and there's no guarantees that what he's doing will work. Because at the end of the day, we do not control people's responses. But we're completely responsible for how we behave towards people. And so that's what Moshe says, I'm going to try everything, I'm going to pull out every trick in the book, even doing something which at the same time technically honors what Hashem has instructed me, but simultaneously kind of pokes the bear a little bit in the hope that maybe it will wake them up. So that's Moshe, obviously, who has the highest, deepest form of love for a fellow Jew. But the Torah tells us these stories so we could learn from them. It's not telling us a story to say, wow, he was a great man. It tells us these stories so we could reflect in our own lives and think, hey, hang on a second. Every single one of us, whether we are willing to acknowledge it or not, in our minds we have certain individuals who we think they are beyond the pale. For whatever reason. This person is a self-hating Jew. This person has done X and Y. They've hurt me so badly. Every person has somebody or some category of people say, these, I don't even know if they're Jewish. I don't think they should be considered Jewish anymore. And it might be so bad, might even be so bad, that it's not even healthy to try and engage with them, because you know what's going to happen. They're going to be very obstinate, and they're just going to stick their heels in, and they're going to hold their position, and they're not going to budge. And Moshe is teaching us over here that the attitude that a Jewish person should have is find a way. That's our responsibility, because the reality is, as bad as anybody might be, most of us do not have in our circle somebody who is Dasan and Aviram. We don't. We might have people who did all kinds of things or behave in a particular way, who really get our back up, you know. They chew with their mouth open at the Kiddush. I don't know what terrible things people could do, right? If Moshe was willing to do everything in his power to reach Dasan and Aviram, even when Hashem had told him that they were unreachable, how much more so then do we have a responsibility when there's somebody who we have decided is unreachable? How much more so do we have a responsibility to reach out to them?
Right.